In Arkham Horror, the card game, player cards that are released with no apparent deck in mind are considered especially hard to use. In Arkham, Massachusetts, the dedicated detectives who investigate these unusual cards are members of a podcast known as Miskatonic University Radio. These are the Binder Trials.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Miskatonic University Radio, a podcast exploring Fantasy Flight Games' Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm Dane.
I'm Dan.
I'm Ben.
And today, court is yet again in session. This episode, we're going to be analyzing some player cards that are celebrated community favorites and some lesser-known gems, and ask, does this card truly belong behind bars / in your binder, or should you play it, warmly smile at it, and know that it's there for you?
Wait, is this when you said court is in session? I assumed that Dane, you've been arrested for the crime you confessed to during the last time we talked about this on the episode.
It was a whole ordeal.
Is that not right? I mean, I look. I'm not going to say like I might be willing to be a character witness. I don't want to implicate myself in your crimes. Is what I'm worried about. You know, like I'm worried about being charged as an accomplice.
I think the bigger horrible thing that happened was apparently that the ad interrupted the intro. So, which also happened when I was viewing it on my computer over here. So I was very upset by that. That's more egregious, I think, than the crimes that I confessed to.
If people
last
want
time.
the full intro, they're listening to it right now on this podcast, so or in the on YouTube,
Fair.
So we did this a couple episodes ago. So the gist is we're going to take a look at some cards that we've reviewed in the past or never reviewed that are divisive either amongst ourselves or the community. And we're going to decide if each card is the best card ever, has to be played in every single deck, or is going to get sealed in Dane's binder filing cabinet box forever, and Dane will never be allowed to play these cards again, and everyone else can do what they want, but Dane will never, those cards will never see the light of day.
Really just makes the whole thing a little more fun by adding stakes. That's really the purpose of the actual binder box there.
Of course, we're going to give ourselves like a time limit for each one of these, because justice is swift, so we'll have about 6 minutes for each one of these cards before we'll make our final judgment. And of course, for those who are asking last time, that is actually a new box that Dane has. The first box he was forced to set on fire with the cards inside. So that's where we're at. Why don't we jump right into it, I guess. So the first card we have is Stick to the Plan. This is a Guardian asset, level 3, no cost because it's a permanent and exceptional. It's a talent. Reaction: before you draw your opening hand, search your deck for up to 3 different tactic and or supply events and attach them to Stick to the Plan. Shuffle your deck. Cards attached to Stick to the Plan may be played as if they were in your hand, and as an additional cost to play the attached card, exhaust Stick to the Plan.
Ben's 2 least favorite words in the English language, as if.
Well, I mostly hate them at Arkham because it hurts my rules brain too much. I mean, this one's not that bad because this one's like, okay, I'll just play it from my hand. I'm sure there's a weird, somehow Luke plays this card and it messes everything up. I don't know.
Someday, yeah.
So yeah, I think this one's on the list because this one's pretty popular amongst the community as like a first pickup for a lot of Guardian decks. And I don't know. I find very rarely play it immediately. I usually do pick it up later in my Guardian deck builds, like after I spent like 20 or 30 experience. But auto is what people call this. Auto include every Guardian deck. What do you guys think?
The thing is, like, because it's a permanent, we've talked about some of these before, there's sort of a lower cost of putting it in your deck that it doesn't really replace anything else, so in that sense it's fine, but it is 6 XP, that's a lot, right? So, before we go further, so what are the major cards you can put on this thing, the supply and tactics? Like, things like Dodge, Dynamite Blast, Emergency Cash, Shortcut if you can play it, like if you're Mark or somebody. There's definitely some good cards, but like, you know, the things that you really want on your first turn are maybe like a weapon or beat cop. You can't put those on it, right? So I don't know.
The biggest thing is Ever Vigilant, I think, right?
Yeah,
that's like the huge thing.
Is that like how much of how highly people rate this card is entirely based on the Ever Vigilant interaction? Is that like most of it, or is that just a small piece of it?
My opinion is based on the interaction. I don't know if that's the wider use case for it. I mean, the way I was thinking about this is, how much experience did you pay to reduce your deck size, Dan?
Not 6. I mean, I would eventually I would eventually pay XP for it, but I would certainly get like Beat Cop and Vicious Blow and weapons and stuff first. You know, like we're going to talk about another card soon, which is sort of similar to this in some ways. Which even that card, which I think is better, I usually don't get like first right out of the gate. I'm going to buy some other stuff first. You know.
Yeah, I mean, some would argue that you don't necessarily need the Beat Cops and Vicious Blows. Like, if you're going into scenario 2, you know, like the enemies aren't going to see a lot of scaling into being like, you know, huge horrible monsters quite yet. So maybe that is the case to get this. Because you're not going to need those quite yet. The enemies are going to still be reasonable. You can pick this up and reduce the size of your deck by 3. You can more reliably see those Vicious Blows and things like that.
I just kind of think that if you're a Guardian, being successful in a scenario as a Guardian is like getting set up early and then having action compression to be able to deal with like bad turns when there's a lot of enemies out, right? Yeah. And like having a toolbox of things you need. So my experience with this card is you can play Ever Vigilant, and that's cool, but if you need Ever Vigilant, you probably have too many assets in your deck, is sort of what I think usually is how your deck is looking. It's good, like it's a fun interaction, but it's like it's not really necessary, I think. So usually what you're using is like, great, I have my dodge and my dynamite ready when I need them, but if you draw enough cards, you probably just like find those at some point during the game and then you use them near the end, you know?
Sure, but I mean that's a big if. Some Guardians aren't built to draw cards like Mark.
Wait, but Mark draws cards.
But like for example, what if you're playing Tommy, right? Like and you have like a lot of allies in your deck.
Sorry, Tommy. Tommy who?
Or if you're playing
This is like last time we did this, you guys tried to convince me that there were other Guardians, and I'm still very skeptical about that. I don't know. Like, is Tommy that much better if he just like has a dodge and a dynamite available from turn 1?
Tommy doesn't draw cards. Like, he gets his things killed, and then he draws those things again.
That sounds like a character that I probably wouldn't play ever.
It's not a great experience, but you know, I mean, Conrad and Chad, it's also saying that you could put like extra ammunition on it. It's pretty good for gun builds if you're going for like big guns or flamethrower or whatever. Carolyn can use this to put her things on it, supplies and other shenanigans. I think it's better. The less cards that a Guardian can draw, the better it is. I'm sure there's some little chart somewhere amongst the Guardians where you could see it being better. Like Larry can run Lucky Cigarette Case, so he's probably not in a big bind.
I think that's kind of true. All I'm really saying, like, I'm not trying to say this is like a bad card. I have upgraded this card, and I will do so again. All I'm really saying is, it seems like a lot of people, I think, just buy it way too fast. Like, I think that people pass over a bunch of really, really good Guardian cards to get this a little early. And the last thing I would say, if you could put Stand Together on this, I think it would be a lot better, because that would be an excellent thing to just like have available.
They needed that to be a spirit for Calvin, though.
It could be a spirit and a tactic, you know? You're standing together. That's a tactic, kind of, you know?
Sure. You would think.
Yeah.
Write a letter to MJ and demand that be read immediately.
Yeah, we have to make Stand Together a tactic. That's really necessary.
You know what? I bet it'd be easier to convince Duke.
Probably.
Maybe.
So I've got to set a timer for this. So I think we're ready to make a judgment, though.
We're probably out of time. Yeah.
Best card ever or Binder Fodder?
I mean, it's not actually Binder Fodder, but I'm definitely not voting for it for best card ever. So, you know, there it is.
And it's a tough choice considering I do take it in some Guardian decks. That being said, it's like not like I wouldn't be sad not seeing it.
If this card got banned somehow, I would not be sad about it, and I don't think my Guardian decks would be any worse.
Well, some people are calling for it to be banned because they're saying that it takes, you know.
First they should ban Scrapper, but then if they want to keep banning OP permanents, maybe they could ban it after Scrapper.
I'm going to vote best card ever and leave it to Dane to decide whether he thinks this is the greatest thing or has to seal it away forever.
We're going to start things off by sealing away things forever. Here we go, everybody. Stick to the plan.
Yes.
Going behind bars.
This is the meme that I would like people to imagine me doing right now is the like sickos yes meme, because that's me right now.
Wow. The first of the cards to go into the binder.
I wasn't expecting it to go that way, but you know, sometimes that's
this is what we're all about on this podcast. We slaughter sacred cows and we make delicious hamburgers out of them.
Well, I don't know.
Dying.
All right,
Yes.
let's move on to the next card, I guess. So next up we have Studious. This is a seeker asset, level 3, no cost because it's a permanent. You begin each game with one additional card in your opening hand. That's it. That's all it does. I don't remember why this is on this list. Did somebody say this was bad?
I think that it doesn't get talked about that much compared to how incredibly good we think it is. And I remember the Optimal Play guys, who I like and who I think are generally have very smart ideas about cards. I think they were kind of down on it when it first came out. This was like a couple years ago. I don't know if they've revisited it since then, but I remember them being like kind of saying it wasn't that great and being like, I don't know about that. Right, I mean, if there was ever like it's a real like the Virgin stick to the plan, the Chad Studious kind of situation with these two cards. Like the disparity here is sharp.
I mean, Comrade's saying, is the plan you're sticking to anti-fun? Yes, because I'm very much in the boat that while Studious I believe is like mathematically, statistically a good card, it is one of the most boring purchases you could possibly buy in this game, and that's why what Dan said earlier, if they took Stick to the Plan out of the game entirely, which we just did, if Studious was also taken out of the game entirely, I wouldn't be heartbroken nor sad, is exactly my sentiment for this card.
Studious was taken out of the game, I would fly to Minnesota and stand in front of FFG and just start like crying and just sobbing in the parking lot. No, but I agree with what Dane said. Like Studious is like a classic boring card game card. Like it doesn't really look like it does very much, and it's not like really fun to like look at or read the text. It's like very simple, but just I think it's really, really, really good.
It's ridiculous how much value this gives you.
Yeah. Like, one way to think about it is, well, so first off, you can get literally 2 of these for the amount of XP it costs to get 1 Stick to the Plan, right? So, like, Stick to the Plan reduces your deck by 3. This reduces your deck by 2 and puts those cards into your hand, right? Which is just way better. But, like, like, the way I would think about it is just, like, the best time to have cards in your hand is as early as possible, right? Like pretty much any card, you'd rather have it in your hand now than like 2 turns from now. But there's a lot of cards that you're trying to have in your opening hand that are much, much, much better if you get them early in the game. And like, Stick to the Plan also kind of does this, but Stick to the Plan only works on certain types of cards. Studious just draws you cards in general. So like it increases your chance to find like everything.
Yeah. This card also came out mid Circle Undone, which is surprise when tarot cards came out. And tarot cards obviously have this huge bonus for when you draw them in your opening hand, right? You get to play them for free, and they don't cost anything. So, like, this coming out in, like, what, pack 4 or 5 or something like that of the Circle Undone was like, this is what we want. This is what we need. Everybody wants this, right? But
it definitely makes the tarots better, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, like, the only way, and like Comrade said, like, with big hand or tarot stuff, this card feels good to buy in certain strategies, but if you're buying it just because it's purely a very strong card, it's like, it doesn't feel great for me.
Because keep in mind that Studious, it gives you 1 extra card, but that's before the mulligan. So effectively it lets you look at 2 other cards. That's what's really powerful about it. If this was like after the mulligan, I think it would still be a good card, but it wouldn't be like as just incredibly great as it is. And yeah, I agree. It's kind of boring. Like there's an argument that this should be maybe the first thing you upgrade into, and it's usually not. I'm usually going to upgrade into other stuff first, but I think it's really good. Sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
We are deciding best card ever or Binder Fodder. Those are the two. Those are the two options. Time's up arbitrarily because I've got to set the timer again. I think this is a very good card. I definitely don't think it's Binder Fodder. I do agree that it is in fact boring, but it is very good. So until it gets tabooed to cost like more experience or like give you half a card in your opening hand, so you have to buy 2 of them. I think best card ever is my vote.
Same.
Well, it sounds like
I'm gonna say it's garbage, but it sounds like it's saved.
You don't even really believe that. You're just being contrarian.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I just wouldn't be mad if it were like
It
lost in a
is.
binder.
It is like it's not a Dane card. Is the way I
No,
would put it.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Give me back double or nothing.
Well, that
Dane,
card was too good and it's been banned. So
Dane, did you ever play Double or Nothing before it was banned? Did you even?
Ben, it's not the point here.
before it was banned for being overpowered,
But yeah, it's
just like Scrapper is going to be in the next taboo list.
All right, let's move on to the next card. And
Yeah,
let's
let's start a timer for this one.
I did it. All right, watch this. This is a rogue skill card. It has a willpower, a combat, and an agility icon, and it's a gambit. Commit only to a skill test you are performing. As an additional cost to commit, watch this, to a skill test, spend up to 3 resources. If you succeed by 1 or more, gain twice that many resources. And it features a guy like jumping off a building or maybe through a window, shooting both of his guns. So
yeah, cool art, cool flavor text.
Yeah, before I criticize this card, I do want to take a moment to say that the John Woo ass art is incredible and that I really like it.
Yeah, no, it's great.
yeah, so this is a card that I think a lot of people like in the community, especially with big money decks. I like it in big money decks, and I usually play it in most rogue cards or rogue decks that aren't like clue focused. It's a fun way to get extra money. But what do you guys think?
Rogues have a lot of ways to get money. And like, here's the thing: you're playing solo. You've got Lone Wolf. That's like all the money you'll ever need. You're playing literally any other mode, including solo. You've got Faustian Bargain. Faustian Bargain is your friend. The Satan is your best friend. This
Like
card
Cake used to sing.
right. And this card is like, I've used it before in like Tony decks or like Finn decks. Obviously, it's got an agility symbol on it and it gives you money, right? Like those are two things rogues really like and want. But generally speaking, I feel pretty like okay about this card when it resolves. See, double or nothing, and then this card gets pretty cool. But like, I agree with Comrade in chat. I think the only time that I really view this card as being a solid like economy option is in parallel skids, because he gets that free action that you can use to commit symbols to it, and you get some extra bucks off like for fast free. But otherwise, it's like it's tough. It's a tough pickup for me. It usually gets cut.
Yeah, I just tend to think, we've talked about how economy cards where you have to have money to play them are just a lot worse, because like if you're poor and you really need money, this card doesn't do anything for you, right? So I get Ben is saying like in a big money deck where it's not that you're going to be like poor and then you need money, then you play something and then you're poor again. In a big money deck, you're trying to just have a ton of money and have like a continual influx and outflux of money throughout the game. I think there's a stronger case for playing this in decks like those. So if you're playing a big money deck that is not mainly based around clues, I think there's kind of an argument for playing this, although I don't think it's going to be like the best card in your deck. But if you're not playing specifically that type of deck, if you're just playing like generically like a Tony Morgan deck or like a Finn deck or something like that, I don't think you should play this, because it'd be one thing if it had a question mark on it, so you could just kind of commit it to anything, but it kind of limits it that you can only commit it to the other types of tests. And remember, sorry, you have to succeed by 1. So like on hard mode, it's also like a lot of tests where I have a pretty good chance to succeed, but if I have like a 75% chance to succeed, I probably have like a 60% chance to succeed by 1, which means I have a 40% chance of just losing 3 money. That's terrible. Like you can't commit it to those tests.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely has those two downsides. It doesn't have the intellect symbol on it, which feels really bad, and I used to forget about that constantly. I was like, oh, cool, I'll pull this money card in my Finn deck, and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And the succeed by 1, so like this effectively, it gives you an extra symbol to the test you're doing, but it doesn't actually help you trigger itself, right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
That is a big downside. I mean, the upside is like theoretically this is an emergency cache that's actionless, because you're like doing it as something you'd be doing anyway. And it's kind of fun to gamble. And if you really need to fail a test by drawing the auto fail, this is a card that you can commit. So,
but hang on one second though. with emergency cash, I mean, cash is also not a fantastic card, right? But the classic case where I would play emergency cash is I would like hope to draw it on my opening hand, and I would play it on my opening hand to play like a Leo DeLuca or a big weapon or something like that, right? If you have this in your opening hands, you probably can't fight or evade something right away. You probably can't do a will test right away, and you can't investigate and use it because it doesn't have an in symbol on it. So like there's plenty of situations where you, even though this is actionless, you can't really play this at will, and you could play cash whenever you want.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, speaking of will, like Ben was talking about, he always forgets that there's no intellect symbol on this. I think that's one of the most awkward parts about this card, is that like I'm playing it in generally a rogue deck that wants big money, and rogue symbol, like the rogue symbols, the classic rogue symbols are intellect and agility. Nobody wants a will symbol on a card. Like, what is Finn like 6 of the rogues gonna do with one will on it? But Comrade does make a point that it is good in Dexter, who might want like fast money. But the thing is I think this card suffers from like when you're really considering the value of a deck slot. Is this worth a deck slot? Because again, we were talking about all the others. We just got Unscrupulous Loan, which is a ridiculous amount of money for people who really want to kind of hoard all their money. But there are people who like to spend their money, like get it and then spend it fast on things, and for those decks it might be okay.
Well,
yeah, I think that the super TLDR is just like it's a money card that costs 3 money to play, and therefore really only big money decks should even think about it.
Well, that's not the decision we have to make tonight. Either we keep it, best card ever, use it in every deck, or seal it away in Dane's card prison box. That's a filing cabinet binder.
This came out in Carcosa. Jeez.
So I guess what's the vote? I'm not sure if any minds were changed in this discussion. I was kind of changed. I'm like, yeah, it's not that great. What do you think, Dan? Keep it.
I'm voting binder on this one.
I'm also voting binder on this one.
Sounds like it's in the binder forever. So.
Unanimous binder. All right.
Yep, banished.
Watch this get sealed.
Hell yeah.
Forever.
Bang, bang.
All right. Well, a tragic loss of that cool art. So the next card is Hawkeye Folding Camera. This is a secret asset, costs 2, level 0, has a willpower icon on it. It's an item and a tool. A reaction after the last clue is discovered from your location. Place 1 resource from the token pool on this card as evidence. Limit once per game at each location. While Hawkeye Folding Camera has 1 more evidence, get +1 willpower. 2 more evidence, get +1 intellect. Or 3 or more evidence, you get +1 sanity. And those obviously all stack. And it takes up a hand slot. And it has a very grim art of someone taking a picture of like someone that's being hanged.
Yeah, just don't look at the middle of the card.
Yeah.
This one is I don't know. I don't think we've talked about this one that much on the podcast, but I feel like we argue about this one a lot, just kind of amongst ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dane, do you want to make a case for this? Because I think you really like this card. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. This is a card that this came out. We used to play a ton together in person. And generally speaking, we would play in like 2-person, Ben would hang out with us, we'd be 3-person. And whenever we kind of meet up, it's a 4-person thing. So this card was not on my radar for quite a while. And when I realized that this card gets better the less clues that spawn on locations, example in like solo, duo, this card, I got really excited because it meant the same thing that cards like some rogue cards or like a card that we're going to be talking about a little later, things that get things in intervals of 3 are really, really great in 3-person. It kind of changed up that dynamic and makes me excited about cards like this because cards like this are incredible. And I think Hawkeye Folding Camera is one of my favorite Seeker cards of all time because it gives so much value for just 2 cards or 2 credits and an install action. It gives you a will, which is incredible on a lot of people. Defensive stats always good. Will is always a great stat. And it gives you an intellect, which is obviously incredible because comparing this to Magnifying Glass, which I know Dan is going to do, and I want to get to it first.
Who, me? Really?
Like an intellect is just better than having a Magnifying Glass intellect, which is because magnifying glass intellect can only be used in investigates, and sometimes you're going to run across those tests where it's like test 3 book for each point you fail by, like throw a clue away or something like that.
That's the angle you're going with
So,
on this?
I mean that's one of the stats that it gives you, and then it also gives you another sanity, which is generally something that seekers don't really need. But off classes like Roland, and other people who have like really low sanity who can take it and actually benefit a lot from having it. It's great on. Luke loves
How-
it. Norman loves it. It's just a solid like thing for them.
You know, I was kind of with you on some of that. Really, the reason I play this card is because when I want that +1 willpower and I don't have anything else in my hand slots, like if I'm playing Luke and I want to use willpower and maybe get the intellect, it's like pump up your will. But I don't know, just getting +1 int by itself is like very rarely useful. Very rarely.
I think there's a case for it in like a solo Luke deck or maybe like a duo Luke deck. Like Ben played it when we did some campaign on Twitch a while ago, and it was all right. But like, if there's more than 2 people in your group, or if you don't need the will really badly, I think you should instead just play the best card in the game instead, which takes up the same slot and is just better, right? Like instead of paying 2 in an action, you could pay 0 and 0 actions, or sorry, 1 and 0 actions, and then upgrade into 0 and 0 actions for magnifying glass, right? Because the will, like, I mean, if you really need will and book, what are you doing? Like, why do you need both of those, right? You probably need one way more than the other. You don't get if they were switched, like if you got the book first and then the will later, it would be better, I think, for a lot of these decks, but maybe not for Luke. But like, I want the book right away, probably, if I'm a seeker, right? Then the sanity I don't care about, because unless you're like Joe or Roland, like pretty much everybody has decent sanity as a seeker. I want the card that is fast, that costs less, and that immediately makes me better at getting clues.
Yeah, you're right. This does have the downside that you have to ramp it up to get the benefit. So,
Which is a big downside.
Yeah, unlike like magnifying glass, if you draw this late in the game, you probably don't play it. You know, you probably can't get the benefit you want out of it.
Yeah.
So it is reliant on getting it early in your mulligan, and you do need to set it up with 2 money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, any other arguments for or against? I guess. I mean, it
is good. This card is definitely something that I've like. I know that in 3 or 4 player I would never play this card. Like very, very rarely. Like maybe in a Luke deck, because Luke can take weird cards that nobody likes to get this to work. And I would go the distance for this card. But like in solo and duo, this is a card that I will be very happy to put into almost any deck. Some people like Trish, I don't really like it for, unless you're playing Jeremiah, which is like, if you want to get the full bang for your buck in terms of even and stuff like that, you would. But I think this card is a very, very good card in the environments that it thrives in. It's good enough to be like considered in almost every deck. And in the environments that basically 3 and 4 player, I would never take it. And it's like I would never even consider it. And for that reason, I would.
It is. I mean, it is a fun card. It's the opposite of Studious in that it is like fun to play if you care about that.
Totally.
But
I always enjoy the cards that give you an extra little completely unnecessary side quest to do every game.
But I would never play it in higher player counts, and even in like duo or solo, I would really only play it if you actually need the will, like Luke or something.
Yeah.
All right, well,
the last argument I would make for it is that it's a better active desperation target than magnifying glass ever will be.
That is okay. That is a fair point.
All right. Well, the time of judgment is here.
And if you're playing Lola, you could put active desperation on your stick to the plan and use it to throw your Hawkeye folding camera at something.
Just watch this.
There's some Lola people in the community. They're probably taking down notes right now. They're like, "Oh, that could be my next Lola deck."
All right, Dane, what is your judgment on this card?
Well, I obviously think it's the best card ever.
All right, Dan.
I think it's trash.
Ooh, leave it to me, huh?
It's a Ben decision.
It's a Ben decision.
I think it's good in the decks that benefit from both the will and the int, but it's trash if you're just trying to use it to like get int in like a passive will. Like there's no reason to do that.
What is the fate of this card, Ben?
Dane will never be allowed to use it again. No, I can't let that color my. I can't let that bias be.
I mean, I think if you feel like compared to the conventional wisdom on this card, if you think it's a lot worse than that, I think you should vote for trash.
What's the conventional wisdom?
I think a lot of people play this card.
I think a lot of people play it because they're playing solo or duo, to be fair.
Maybe.
Did we decide if we're judging these based on solo versus multiplayer?
We always it's like dark matter. We always forget that like supposedly like probably most people who play this game ever in the world are playing like solo, which is very weird because we don't do that at all. But
all right,
I don't know. It's up to you, Ben. Only you can decide.
I seal it to the binder. Walk it away.
Away it goes. Oh, that's gotta be painful. That's gotta be
like
painful.
Most of the cards that we've done. No, all of the cards that we've done. No, Studious survived.
Studious made it. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, at least
I'm right there with you, comrade.
At least I'll have friends. You know. Well, don't worry. You know, listeners don't have to abide by these judgments. Only Dane has to. So.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look at the next set of cards, which is the Rite of Seeking set. So we're looking at all three: the level 0, level 2, and level 4. So Rite of Seeking is a mystic asset, cost 4 with an intellect icon on it. Has uses 3 charges. Action: spend 1 charge. Investigate using willpower instead of intellect. If you succeed, discover 1 additional clue at this location. If a cultist, skull, elder thing, tablet, or auto fail symbol is revealed during this test, after this test is resolved, we lose all remaining actions and immediately end your turn. It is a arcane slot. The level 2 version, I believe the only difference is you get a +2 willpower for the test, and the level 4 version costs 5 instead of 4, has an extra intellect icon, and you get the +2 willpower for the test and discover 2 additional clues. Yeah, Rite of Seeking. So, I mean, I think the contention with this is you basically never want to use this unless it's your last action, right?
Yeah, or you at least want to try to avoid it if at all possible, or have like the grotesque statue or something out maybe as insurance.
And,
sure.
and this used to be like when it came out in Dunwich, right? It used to be the like only seeker, or excuse me, only mystic clue getting card, really, right? But there's a lot more options now, like clairvoyance, sixth sense.
Yeah, I mean, like to start out, like I would say off the bat, I think clairvoyance is almost always better than this. Like I pretty much always play clairvoyance over this. But like I think Dane really hates this card, or really hates the kind of downside of it. And for me, it's like I'm kind of fine having 1 or 2 copies of this as like my 3rd and maybe 4th copies of clairvoyance if I'm playing like a mystic who's going to be getting a lot of clues, because I think the downside's kind of manageable. I don't know though. Dane, do you want to make the case for this is actually garbage?
So the times that I've played it and seen it played, there are like circumstances in which the like Akachi or whoever is playing this card and they're like, okay, the thing that we need to do is get 2 clues off this victory location, move and resign in that order. And this is a card that threatens that. Like no other card that gets getting you clues. I mean, maybe like Drawn to the Flame might, right? Because you might get a horrible encounter card. But like this card specifically completely destroys that if you just draw a symbol and it's like, oh, well, now you have to end your turn and then you're just dead or whatever. You know, like you're gonna get defeated.
You got that. You got that victory still, unless you get defeated before the game ends.
Well, no, but then you get defeated and you drop your clues on the location.
Well, it's oof.
I mean, there's a lot of times where like somebody else can shortcut you, or like, okay, well, we thought we could win this turn. Now we just have to like wait out 1 more turn and maybe draw a bad encounter card. You know?
Yeah, well, totally. But I think that like you were saying, clairvoyance is the better card. We have a lot of other things that we have access to. For me personally, I really like Sixth Sense as just like a pretty reliable card. I think obviously clairvoyance is better than Sixth Sense, but if I'm playing Seeking cards, there are even like events that are available that I would play far before this. And that's just kind of my point of view, is that this is just sort of outclassed in a lot of ways by all of the other there's no deficit. I wouldn't put myself in a seeking deficit if I were playing like a seeker mystic and not taking this card at this point. And I think it's kind of like fine to say that. However, there is a very big argument for this card to be taken in 3-player because it is one of the few cards that upgrades at its max form, which is its level 4 form even, where it gets you 2 extra clues, which is super pivotal in 3-player matches.
See, that's the thing. In 3 or even 4-player, I don't really want to play Read the Science. I definitely don't want to play Sixth Sense. You're just not getting enough clues that way. That's too slow. Like, I want to get 3 clues in a shot. So I'm going to play 2 Clairvoyances, and then I'm probably going to play like 1 or 2 copies of this, and then I'm going to play like a Recharge level 3 or something. And
definitely Eldritch Inspiration, right? Because that's kind of like what.
Oh, absolutely, definitely an incredible card. But that's what I'm saying is like to me that there's a lot of cases where you can just do this safely, where you do something else, you move to a location, then you get 3 clues as your last click. And then next turn, well, there's 3 more clues on this location. Okay, well, I like draw a card, play a card, and then get 3 clues as the last click. I think that you can usually do that. And if you really need to, you can roll the dice, or maybe you have a grotesque statue or something like that, or maybe you have a time warp even. You know, like I think that the situations where like we literally lose the game if you draw a spooky token on this are pretty limited, because usually when it is critical, somebody else in the group will be able to get clues, or you'll be able to get clues with some other card. But you can still get a lot of clues very efficiently with this in any case where it's not like completely critical that you don't draw a spooky token. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
I generally think it works pretty alright. I think I very rarely lost a turn, or lost actions rather, to this, because usually I just plan around it. I guess it is the downside that you can't, like, if you want to like really clear a location really fast that has like 8 clues on it or whatever, you can't really safely pump it unless you have other support, which isn't really a downside with like clairvoyance or even divination.
Yep.
Like there are just a lot more options that you can just like not play this and still have just as many clue getting cards.
Yeah.
Which maybe have slightly different downsides, but that's kind of what Mystic's whole gimmick is it trades power for penalty or whatever, right?
Doesn't divination only let you use it twice basically to get the full set of 3 clues though? To me, like
there's level 1 and 4, but that's only just like have to spend the charges after you succeed.
That's just like a deal breaker, though. Like I don't want to pay whatever it is 3 and an action to put something down and then use it twice and then not be able to recharge it. Like that's recharge level 4 is like so huge for these types of decks for me, for like playing these big expensive spells where 1 charge is worth a lot. Being able to like put 4 more charges on something is incredible. You can't do that with divination. So for me, I would play this over Sixth Sense and divination virtually all the time. But I would definitely take clairvoyance first.
All right.
Yeah.
We have to declare our judgment. Best card ever or Binder Fodder.
I'm going best card ever. If this goes in the binder, I have to humiliate myself by putting Sixth Sense in my deck, and I don't want to do that.
Well, you don't. Dane does.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I'm saying Binder Fodder. I will not miss this card except for putting it on my glasses and making hilarious. Dumb.
That's funny. I enjoyed that.
Eyes.
It's up to you, Ben.
Ben, what is the verdict on this card?
Yeah.
No laughing allowed. This is serious.
Wow.
All right.
Literally just said no laughing.
Dane doesn't make the rules here. I make the rules. Dane, seal those cards away in your binder box forever.
Oh,
get out of here.
There's just better options. I think you
hate to see it.
So, I forgot, what's the art in this card? What is this eye looking at? Is it just looking at like a window, or is there a spooky in there?
I think the point is the intent, and the intent is to seek. As Comrade said in chat, if seeking is right, I don't want to be wrong.
All right, let's move on to the next card to face judgment. So this is Take Heart. This is a survivor skill card. It's innate, max 1 committed per skill test. You commit Take Heart to any type of test. If this test fails, the performing investigator draws 2 cards and gains 2 resources.
When you reach for a pastry off the pastry plate, take tart.
What a card! Do you remember when this card came out? This card came out in the Forgotten Age It came out like somewhere in there, and it was like the first of like Survivor cards that we were like kind of like, oh, interesting. This card actually gives survivors a little bit of gas.
Yeah, Survivors.
We played it for a little while.
Yeah, I think when this first came out, we were pretty pumped on it. We might have even, I don't remember when we started reviewing cards or when I joined the podcast, but I think we liked it because it's like, yeah, survivors are bad at tests. You know, they fail everything anyway. Might as well have them draw 2 cards and get 2 money.
Yeah, I want to say 2 things really quickly before I make the case that this card is bad. The first is that this is one of the best like title and art combinations of any card in the game. It's incredibly good. Take art, very good. And then the second thing is, I mean, I started out very high on this card. I started out putting this in like any deck that could play it, and I was only convinced that it was bad by the experience of playing it and just having it be very bad all the time.
I think it's nerve-wracking, right? Like, you're generally playing this when you're like, you don't want to play it when you're at parity, right? If you're like 4 at 4, it's like you generally don't want to play this to be like, okay, even if I fail, I'll get something good, because it's still a card in your deck. It's still a card in your hand that you're sacrificing, and you just draw a 0, and you're like, all right, I get a clue.
It's like watch this or something. It's a card in your hand that's like, this might give me some money in cards if I find the right time to use it. And you could just have a card in your hand that you can just like always get stuff from it, right?
It's another gambling card in that sense. I do use it in Stella because I usually just like try to fail a test really hard on the first action in Stella and then get like a bunch of benefit from it. But the other survivors, I have these precious 3 actions. I'm usually not actually trying to fail them. I mean, maybe in solo when you like can't like pump up stats as much, so you are doing a lot more gambit tests where it's like, oh, I can't really get up to 2 above.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe you like it more there. I still try to put this in decks, but I usually cut it very quickly. And when I do commit it, it is. I mean, yeah. The thing with this card is the meme is, you know, you commit it and you draw the sign every time, right?
Yeah. And this is the thing. This is the thing that we wanted to talk about, and by we I mean I. If you pay attention to the Miskatonic University Radio Instagram or Harrison's meme account, this card is considered by many to be Red Seal of the Elder Sign. You don't even have to pay 5 experience, and you get something that will draw the Elder Sign like 75% of the time. And this happened to me. I'm playing Stella in Edge of the Earth. The first token pull was just some random let's take heart in Rabbit's Foot because it feels like crack in Stella. And I draw the Elder Sign. And luckily, Stella has a fail-safe Elder Sign in that you can choose to fail. And it was fantastic in that sense. But the amount of times that I've seen this pull an Elder Sign is absolutely freakish. And I'm sort of looking at this card now more like, if you want to succeed a test that you don't really have hope in succeeding, it's better than a Promise of Power because it has the propensity to draw the Elder Sign. But if we're being real about this card, I think my initial reaction to this was that this is half of a stand together. This is like a stand together for you, but there's like an asterisk with a a lot of text under.
You can also commit it to other people, right? You can commit it to someone else that you think is going to fail a test and give them the benefit. I mean, that's something, I guess.
Kind of trolly too, which is funny.
It's like, I don't believe in you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Go. It's the ultimate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I do think it's probably worth playing in Stella if you're going to play a Stella deck. But I think that just in general, like, again, I've put this card in decks thinking, oh, this card seems really good, and I've had the experience of like holding it in hand forever, looking for a time to play it, wishing I had a card that would actually do something, and I've had the experience of like playing it and being like, well, this is pretty good odds to give me stuff, and it just whiffs and does nothing. And that happens, I think, more often than you'd kind of like psychologically think.
It could also be a psychological bias we have from just remembering the times when it didn't work versus when it did.
Yeah, that's also probably true.
And I have a PhD.
One of like the 500...
Okay, I'm not biased. Hey.
I feel like that means you're most biased, but
it's
interesting.
It's definitely true in that, like, when I'm looking at Survivor cards and like a Survivor pool, and I'm like, what do I take for economy? Because like emergency cash is a thing that I don't really want to take. This is like the alternative to it. And I put this in solely because I don't want to play emergency cash. Not because I actually want to be playing this card. But I really don't even want like I guess you'd really have to think about the value of what drawing 2 cards and gaining 2 resources is and why you're putting it in your deck. But
it's true that survivors don't have that many options for money. Last thing I would say, obviously this does combo really well with drawing thin, because if you have drawing thin out, you can make a test more likely to fail, which is pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
But I would argue if you have drawing thin out, you probably have enough money in cards already.
Yeah, you don't.
Or at least like
that's
I mean, like obviously more is always good, but at that point you have to ask yourself whether this is really worth its slot in your deck, you know?
Yeah.
I vote Binder. What do you guys think?
I'm gonna vote Binder.
I'm gonna vote not Binder, because this card is
that's a cowardly move. You
Yeah.
you just spent the last 6 minutes agreeing with us that it's bad.
Well,
Now
I'm
you're
also
gonna,
playing
like,
Stella right now on Edge of the Earth, and that's definitely locked into that deck.
Okay.
So
all right.
I'm having a lot of fun with it right now.
Well, too
Okay.
bad. Unfortunately, 2 of us voted Binder, Dane, so you're gonna have to swap that out immediately.
That's not how the thing is called Binder Trials, Dane, not Binder Happy
Wait a
Fun
second.
Time. Like in a real trial, you can't be like, this guy's clearly guilty, but he gave me a sandwich the other day, so like you got to be impartial here, you know.
Dane, I think eagle-eyed watchers of the VOD saw you put those 2 cards in that box, but you definitely have more than 2 copies of this card. Because it came out of the
no.
Proud Age, and it's
I have
Stella.
no idea what you're talking about.
Dane.
These are the only 2 copies that I have, and they are in this box.
Is it in the, no, wait, is it in the Stella deck? I thought it wasn't.
I will never play these 2 copies of this card ever again.
Oh, come on, I think you got to put all the copies in there.
I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, it came out of the Stella deck. That was
No,
her
it
version.
It did.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Definitely did.
They didn't give Survivor a different economy card to go with the other
This
4.
entire courtroom is out of order. I'm declaring a mistrial, and also I'm jury nullifying the entire verdict. Habeas corpus. Let's move on to the next card.
All right. Next card is On the Hunt, level 3. Specifically, we're looking at. This is a Guardian event, cost 0. It has willpower, an intellect, and a combat icon on it. It is a tactic, which of course means you can put it on stick to the plan. Fast. Play when you would draw an encounter card during the Mythos phase. Instead, search the encounter deck for an enemy spawning engaged with you instead of its normal spawn location. Attach On the Hunt to it and shuffle the encounter deck. Reaction: when you defeat attached enemy, gain 3 resources.
This card is everything a Guardian has ever wanted in a card.
Sorry, we're talking about On the Hunt, right? On the Hunt.
We're talking about On the Hunt level 3. Maybe not level 1.
Let me go first and make the case against, because I know Dane likes this, and I'll give him kind of like the last word.
Prosecution.
I just think 3 XP is kind of a lot for this, because it's not really a money card. Like, it's a money card in the sense that Watch This is a money card, and that it gives you money when you don't really need money that much. Like, if you're a Guardian and you are able to just kill a random thing from the encounter deck, it's much less likely that you need money. Like, when you really need money is maybe like turn 1 and 2 when you're trying to get out your ally and your weapon, you know? So, like, it's weird that you get the money as a reward for, like, again, if you can do that, it's less likely that you need it. It's better if you could just, like, have the money before you need to do stuff. And I don't really care about drawing an enemy instead of a random treachery. Like, Guardians are fairly resilient to treacheries usually. They usually have decent will, or they have other cards that can deal with that. And, everything's going to come out of the deck eventually anyway, right? At least in higher player counts. So it's like just kind of draw something and you can probably deal with it. Like, I don't know if there's much of an advantage to specifically saying, like, yes, I would like an enemy this turn.
I mean, the interesting thing about it for me is it can... Sometimes there's annoying enemies that spawn across the board or have some other weird spawn mechanics. So I feel like maybe it could be a tech card specifically for that instance. Or maybe you're like really ready to fight the big monster and there's nothing else on the board. So you want to like pull out the victory monster or something and just kill it. So it's more of like controlling the timing of an enemy. And you get 3 money, but that's fine. I think it's more about controlling the timing of drawing the enemy.
It is good for that specifically, like Where the Gods Dwell, where you have to like find the dudes in the deck. It's great in that. It's great in that scenario. If you want to upgrade into it for that last scenario in Dream Eaters.
Broken scenario. right? Like this is
What do you
kind of
mean?
like
That's a great scenario.
well, I mean, this card specifically is
Oh,
broken
yeah.
in that context.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
It's like,
That's what I'm saying. If you want to upgrade into this to do where the gods dwell, sure, that sounds great. I just don't think it's like a toolbox card that is good in other situations because you're going to draw the victory enemies probably. You know.
Well, in lower player counts, you might not necessarily go through the deck, or scenarios where the deck like gets randomly shuffled a lot, or stuff gets discarded. Like all of Circle Undone, things get randomly discarded from the deck constantly, due to like the witch effects or whatever. So it is a little bit of protection against that. I don't. Yeah, it's definitely very niche. I think it's like it's a tech card, and it does cost a lot. Like 3 is a lot just for a tech card.
Yeah. Dane, sorry, we don't have that much time left. Dane, do you want to give us the stirring, eloquent case for this card not going to jail forever?
certainly. So I think what Ben said about it pulling out specific enemies is the powerful part of it. But what's also not being stated there is that it's not only drawing an enemy, but it's not drawing a different encounter card. So Guardians don't have a lot of weight. Like they have one way to prevent Ancient Evils from going off or bad things from happening to them. Roland specifically, there are a few like Guardians who don't have great defensive stats, and for them, especially in like solo or situations where the encounter deck is just loaded with horrible will tests and agility tests, this card is actually really great because it allows you to circumvent drawing those things, especially if you're at like 2 sanity left and you're Roland and your weakness just came out or whatever. You can play it on the hunt to just circumvent that. Like draw a Whippoorwill, draw like a weak enemy, get some bucks off it, right? Or you can use it like Ben and Comrade were saying, you can use it to draw a victory enemy, which is very, very powerful to be able to do that when on command. Because, like Ben was saying, in lower player counts, that is a thing that might just never happen, especially in single player. Because in single player, the more you can control the cards that you're getting, the more power the card has. And like if you're going to be able to, like in a Roland playthrough, a solo Roland playthrough, this card is, I would say, incredible because it does so many different things for him. It calls something to his space, which he can then kill, get a clue on it, get some bucks back. And to kind of like maybe counter Dan's argument of you kind of want the money before you have to do things, this card has no opportunity cost. I mean, of course, there's the 3 experience used to play it, but
The fact that it's a card.
it costs 0 to play. And I think that if you're looking for cards to just give you something like proactively, like for example, like we were talking about the everybody's favorite spirit card before that also costs 3 XP, Stand Together. They're 2 entirely different cards used sort of for different purposes. This card is sort of like once you've played your Gret, you've played your blade, and you want to kind of get back up to be able to maybe play your other weapon or something like that. That's when you use this card too. It's just a lot of value packed into one circumstance. And Dan said that it's kind of maybe undermining it because of that reason. But there's another card that I originally didn't like because of that reason, which is called Crack the Case. Generally speaking, you want your money before you need to do something, and Crack the Case forces you to do something before you get the money off of it.
But can we like add a minute because I just want to say a couple of things. Crack the Case. The thing about the reason Crack the Case is great, if you're a seeker, you have like 5 in right off the bat. You can just start getting clues immediately. You don't need to like set up the way that Guardians do. That's why Crack the Case is good, because you can just like start investigating the first location and then crack it. I
mean, you're saying 5 int like it's base for everybody.
It is.
And I want you to know
it is. All
not
seekers.
base for everybody.
No, all seekers except Amanda have 5 int. That's totally true. So last thing though. So I understand the case for this in solo because you're not going to draw the whole encounter deck. You want to find the victory enemies, but in solo you have to do all the fighting and all the cluing yourself. I think every card in your deck needs to help you do that. Imagine if instead of this card you had to take the initiative, which also saves you from treacheries in most cases. But in a pinch, you could also use it first click to pick up a clue or fight a really tough enemy, and it doesn't cost any XP.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have both. I think that if you're going to make a case against it, the case is that it costs 3 XP, because that I also don't like about it. But everything else I feel is like it's a really solid card for me to take in most circumstances when I'm a guardian, especially in a higher player count, to pull those victory enemies out when you need them, because the board can get cluttered very quickly and you don't have much time to like figure out where you're going to want to be and find things. And for enemies that like spawn halfway across the map with Doom on them, this is even better.
Yeah, I think it's good to pull stuff over. I think if you're playing cards that combo with killing an enemy, getting you some other benefit, like if you're just rolling or you're doing evidences or
Zoe, maybe.
Whatever the interrogate, not interrogate, but the card that gets you 2 money if you have or 2 clues if you have an enemy in your location.
Scene of the crime.
Yeah, and this is a tactic, so you could put it on stick to the plan, which I guess Dane
you can, but I can't.
Yeah, Dane can't.
Yeah, Dane can't because we banished it.
And I will still play it if it doesn't go to the binder.
Think of how funny it would be for this to go to the binder, Ben. That's my last argument. That's the last argument of a desperate man.
We have to be unbiased though, Dan. We can't just think.
I changed my mind. Now actually, it's good for us to be biased.
It's funny for all these cards to go in the binder because then Dane can never play them, but we can't just do that.
I mean, you're not wrong.
So, I wish this didn't cost 3 experience. I feel like if this cost 2 experience, I would definitely be like, yeah, best card ever, sure. 3 experience a little bit more on the fence, but the art kind of looks like a guy hunting dinosaurs, right? So
I think that's literally what it is.
But dinosaurs are big birds.
Yes.
So I'm gonna vote best card ever.
I mean, they're big birds in the sense that humans are like apes, right? So sort of true, sort of not true, right? All right, well, fair enough.
So yeah, this one's gonna survive.
And best card ever. On the hunt lives to hunt another day.
Oh, it would have been so funny for this to go in Dane's binder.
Listen, you already got Hawkeye folding camera, right? I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I think most of the cards that we've talked about today have gone to the binder.
We got a harsh judgment today. I think we still have one more, maybe. I don't know. Actually,
one more. I think. Yeah,
one more.
The slides, so I don't know.
One more.
What's up next? All right, last card. Maybe I think yes is you handle this one. This is a rogue event. Cost 0 experience. Has an intellect icon and agility icon on it. It's a trick. Fast, play after you draw a non-parallel encounter card, but before resolving the card's effects. Choose another investigator. That investigator is considered to have drawn that encounter card instead. Gain 1 resource. I believe this is up for judgment because it's too mean. Is that my understanding? It's like kind of a meme card, and it feels mean to send cards to your allies.
We felt like maybe I think we generally think it's really good, or at least I definitely do. I think you guys probably agree. And we thought that maybe other people might either be worried that this is sort of like a nasty card to play, or that they might think it's just kind of like a goofy meme card to play, kind of like You Owe Me One, right?
So I think that's more of what I've heard. It's kind of like the meme sort of like, whoa, rogues can't handle will tests, so watch out, you're gonna get it. But
that's true though. Rogues are terrible at dealing with they're terrible at dealing with treacheries. They don't have a whole lot of other options. They have like counter espionage, which is very expensive. And this card costs -1 resources, right? We were joking about how like shortcut 0 versus shortcut 2 is so much better because it's like free instead of 1. What about a card that pays you money to play it?
I've never thought about this card this way before.
like I feel like you could almost forget to do that, but I always remember to take the money when I play you.
I always remember too.
And let me tell you, I play You Handle This One a lot.
Yeah, so, I noticed that the last time we were playing Monterey Jack.
Oh yeah, completely. Well, because here's the logic. Like, you're not really being a jerk about it usually, because if you're in a 3 or 4 player game, a 3 player game you have 2 options to mail these cards to. 4 player game you have 3 options. It's likely that you have like a mystic in your group who's going to pass any will test easily. It's likely you have somebody in your group like a survivor or a guardian who can just soak damage and horror pretty easily or can heal themselves. Just most treacheries, there's going to be someone for whom it's like not a big deal. It's the same reason Glory is really good, right? Because Glory, we say, is awesome because she can like assign each treachery to the person who is going to be able to handle it most easily. This just kind of lets you do that when you draw a card that you don't want to deal with.
Yeah, it's almost ultimate protection against encounter cards,
right?
With the exception that it cannot do anything against perils, which I think is totally fair. I think those cards are like kind of made to be extra scary.
That's a good point, though, because one of you guys brought this up in a different context recently, that it seems like they're putting peril on more encounter cards in the recent campaigns. Is that true, or is that just something we kind of subjectively think?
It feels like the particularly nasty ones that like I really want to word in like both in Return to and in some of the newer campaigns usually have peril on them.
Yeah,
and it's usually because it's like it's a choice between two or three like bad things, and it's like, well, I don't want to do any of those things.
Yeah.
And it used to be like ancient, but even ancient evils in like the new sets, like the Return to sets, the replacement ancient evils, which we always say, oh, you gotta word that every time. Even those have perils on them on all the replacement ones. So
Yeah.
because they give you a choice, right? But like there are a lot of cards that don't give you a choice and aren't perils. There are a lot of cards that are just like test will 5, and you look at that as a green character, and you're like, no way, I'm not doing this.
How about the Mystic does? You know,
Yeah,
like
exactly, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think that in a lot of ways this card. So in a couple ways, I guess I should start. I could see this card being sort of like negative play experience if you're going to a group and you like, and they're not really familiar with what rogues do, and they don't have a lot of will. Maybe it's like a Roland or somebody, and you use this in that circumstance, and it's like that could feel bad for somebody because obviously Roland has like really bad defensive stats and also really bad sanity, so like you don't want to get hit with Rotten Remains, right? Like as much as the rogue player doesn't want it, you don't want it. So like I could see that being kind of a bad, or you just wouldn't play it in that case.
I mean,
And maybe people have experienced that. I don't know.
this is a card that can definitely make other players feel bad if you're like using it to like just so you survive, and like you like, oh yeah, here you go, here's this test you will also fail, or here's a giant monster that will stop you from running away, but I'll survive. I'm the rogue, so it'll be fine.
And I feel like that's, if you have that little level of sort of like trust between the other people anyway, then like playing this specific card is not the root cause of that, pain, right? Like
the rogue experience, baby.
Yeah, like if it's not this card, it would be something else, like I think usually you're playing this game hopefully with like your friends, or at least the people that you get along with pretty well, and they'll kind of understand. But yeah, in that scenario where it's just a terrible card that's going to kill either of you, like, yeah, probably don't play this. Like that would just be kind of nasty. But you'll find enough cases to use this card where it's like it's not necessarily a win-win, but it's like a win don't lose, for the two parties involved.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a benefit, right? Sometimes you get
Occasionally,
things from taking
every now and then, like
Mystical Love of Guts,
or maybe
like, great, I love it.
Or maybe it's like a card that does horror, and like Agnes wants to take it and ping something, like there's or Mark wants to take damage and draw a card. Like there's cases like that, right?
Yeah.
So
we're also talking about the 2%, by the way.
Yeah, and it is, by the way,
a trick, which
means that Chuck Fergus can make it fast and free. Or
that's it.
Or could give you a stat boost. A couple of things to say really quick. It does work on enemies, although not on perils, right? So you could mail an enemy directly to the guardian, whoever's going to fight. And this, like Ward, is reactive. You can hold this in hand until you get a bad encounter card. Part of the reason that I wanted to ban the sadly unbanished On the Hunt is it's one of these encounter cards where you have to play it before you even know what you were going to draw, right? This one you can wait and use it when it will be most effective.
Well, it kind of sounds like we're on the same page that there's no reason to seal this away. So best card ever?
This might actually be the best rogue card in the game. It's like this or Cigarette Case.
It's so flavorful though. Like whereas the Cigarette Case completely lacks all flavor whatsoever and is generally a pretty flat card, other than being incredibly efficient. This card is efficient, and it is the rogue experience. Like if you've really never seen this card before and you play with a rogue, you're gonna see this card.
Oh yeah, totally.
And it might be hilarious. You might get like 7 reality acids over the course of one game, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm voting this ascends to being played forever.
Sounds good.
All right.
So what did we banish forever? We banished Stick to the Plan?
Well, let me just take a roll call real quick.
Take one last look. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got Take Heart, Rite of Seeking, all levels. Hawkeye Folding Camera, Watch This, and all 4 copies of my Stick to the Plan.
Wow.
In this binder.
Damn.
Wait, why do you have 4 copies of Stick? Never mind.
Okay, so you have 4 copies of Stick to the Plan, but you definitely only have 2 copies of Take Heart. Is that
That's
it?
right. That's
Okay, all right.
A long time ago, there was a thing called the double packer, and I'm not going to get into that now. Maybe that'll be a future episode.
I will remind you that you are under oath.
This is true. But that is a story for another day.
Well,
All right.
do you think we should have given a stay of execution to like one of the Rites of Seeking? Like, should we have let like level 2 survive or something? Or,
No.
I'm worried that if we start extending leniency to some of these cards, Dane's going to want to save the folding camera, and I want that shit gone forever. So I would say no quarter, no surrender.
Comes with people letting us know what cards they want out of the binder, because there are certainly reasons for retrials. It happens every day probably. So that's the way that
it's
these
actually
cards
really difficult to get a retrial based on what I've learned recently about our judicial system.
As in real life, as in MUR.
So
well, people, if you didn't catch the first episode of the Binder Trials and want to see more of this, check out episode 93. We reviewed some pretty contentious cards there as well. And we definitely do want to encourage people to chat with us about these picks and debates, right? Like we don't want this to be the final word. We're saying this more in the case of hyperbole, even though Rite of Seeking is definitely super garbage and I never want to see it ever again. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to see like what do you want in retrial in our retrial episode. Let us know what you want to see.
Yeah, we'll accept appeals.
Totally, 100%. Reach out to us on Discord. Let us know. Send us an email at comments@mur.fm. Otherwise, to stay current on what we're doing, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. You can get all the links to those at at social.mur.fm. If you really enjoy what we do and want to get more involved, you can become one of our patrons at patreon.com/Miskatonic University Radio, or just leave us a nice review on your favorite podcasting network. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.